Hello, everyone. It's been an amazing last 24 hours because we are kind of overwhelmed with so many questions from all of you. And this session is all about understanding how we can automate UX design with AI for the upcoming workshop that we have from 18th to 20th of March. And Prasad here will answer all your questions today. So thank you everyone who have posted your comments in the questions in the comment section in LinkedIn. And we are going to start without any further delay. Prasad, do you want to talk a little bit about the introduction?
Yeah, so I think there are a lot of misconceptions about AI. So because obviously, a lot of people will look at the same data and all different people will interpret it differently. Some people are thinking that I'm going to lose my job. Some people are thinking, well, do I need to change my skill set? Some people are thinking like, hey, how do I get more productive? So there's different perspectives to that. And what I wanted to do was set the groundwork for the event and also give a quick requirements, because this is going to be a hands-on workshop. I want to give requirements as well. And by the way, Rajiv, are we live on YouTube as well? Awesome. Yes. So so I want to talk to you about getting accounts and stuff like that with key software, so that you can start doing this hands-on, because this workshop is going to be completely hands-on. You are going to be working with all of these tools and practicing and looking at experimenting at building your productivity. All right. So that said, let's get going into the questions. These are all pre-event questions that you might have about AI. How should I approach the workshop and stuff like that? But then, my goal is to answer all of those questions and get you ready for the event itself. So go ahead, Harsh.
Yes. The first question we have is from Vaibhav, and it's the most interesting and trickiest question,
Right.
which is, could AI replace us as UI or UX designer? What skills should we equip ourselves with to cope up with AI intervention as a threat to our profession?
Right. So I have a very interesting role both as the founder of a design studio as well as, an instructor in college. And when I started playing with these AI tools, initially, a lot of our members themselves that are, I don't want to learn AI, right? Why do I need to learn AI? And yeah, that's a fair question. And then I started looking at the tools and I started playing around with them. And there was a moment when it just like a light bulb went off and I looked at it and like, oh my God, technically half of my team is in threat because of these tools. And I'm looking at these tools and think these tools are able to automate what half of my team is doing. So like, really, like, what does this mean for design? What does it mean for the company? What does it mean for profitability? Because, you're also thinking like there's new companies that will come out that will probably use automation much faster than we are. And they will probably, reduce the prices and put a lot of pressure in the market. So like, how does this work, right? It was a wake-up moment for me. And I think, yeah, at a very visceral level, I would agree that there is a real risk of being replaced by AI, right? However, after I played with it for a while and I started thinking about it, I realized actually, no, right? This was not a replace with AI kind of a game. This was actually a force multiplier. How do I increase my productivity? Because there's so much work that I do. That's all donkey work, right? I mean, even as designers, there's so much work that we do that, if somebody took it and made it automated, it would not affect us, right? And then I realized, no, I don't think it's the AI versus me. It's actually, I started thinking of AI as being a direct report for me, right? So what if AI was reporting to me? I had one or two different AIs that were reporting to me, and I would tell them what to do. They'd get the work done, but I was still controlling the game. And I thought that was where the winning combination was. And so I think the question that is there, can AI replace? Yes, to a certain extent, but it's not, at the end of the day, your ability to think creatively, you're still expected to kind of run the show. You're still expected to think strategically in terms of the context in which you're going to deploy the app, and all of that stuff is still yours, right? The AI is simply replacing the parts of your job that are tedious and repetitive, that you would not want to do in the first place anyways, right? And that also take out a lot of time. So that's one thing. Then the next part is, what skills should we equip ourselves to cope with AI intervention? And I think the answer to that is, I think the number one thing, and the more I started learning about AI, a very interesting term came out at me, right? It's called prompt engineering. And I'm like, what is prompt engineering? It turns out the input you give to the AI is directly related to the quality of output you get. So if you are able to give a better quality input, you're going to get a better quality output. So what does it mean, a better quality input? So turns out we have to be a lot more structured in the way we are thinking. We have to be a lot more structured in the way we're describing the problems. And then as we start doing all that, and we start giving the AI what we are thinking in a meaningful way that the AI can take it, now it's going to create interesting opportunities. So I think the idea here is, it's about learning what the strengths and weakness. And by the way, different AIs have different languages. It's almost like, one AI is speaking French, one AI is speaking German, and you're speaking English. So how do you get all these three AIs to talk to each other and even talk to you? And I think that's a larger component. It's like understanding the language that these AIs speak in, so that we can leverage them to the best of our ability. And I think that is the core skill that we need to look at as we start looking at working with AIs to support our work. All right. So let's go on to the next one.
Yeah, going to the next one. Next one is from Achyut. Achyut, are you there in the meeting room?
Yes, I am here.
You want to ask the question yourself?
Okay, sir. So my question is like, see, considering that AI is automating a lot of processes in UX domain, especially. Of course, it's happening elsewhere also, but I'm very specific to UX domain. Considering the automation, like now that a huge load is being taken off from the designers, what are the things that we as designers can shift our focus onto, so that going ahead, AI itself is evolving? For example, ChatGPT is here and 4 is already there, where its capability is increasing manifold. So how will we be, more relevant with times coming ahead? Because right now AI is capable to a certain standard, say X, but what if it is able to do Z also in the coming times? Where can we shift our focus? What key areas, like, so that somewhere, I'm a little bit more better than AI, a place where I'm able to use AI as an assistant, not as a replacement for me.
Right. Achut,
This
this
is
is
my
a really
question.
good question, and I would just give a simple illustration. Okay.
Sure, sir.
Normally, when you develop a piece of software, the first thing that all of us designers do is we have to think about the login experience, right? You have to log in, and you're basically
True.
starting to, get people to enter their user ID, password, validate it, email, vagera, vagera. You get them to enter 10 pieces of information, and then you say, okay, you've created an account and all that stuff. So, and before, we used to have, like, every few years we have a new chat application that comes in. So when I, way back about 15 years ago, we used to have Google Chat, Skype, we have Yahoo Chat, Hotmail, all kinds of chat messaging applications. And universally, what was the most interesting thing was all of them had the exact same process. You'd go in, you would create an account with Google or Yahoo or Skype or whatever. You'll fill in about 5 to 10 different fields. Some companies like Yahoo were really famous for giving you 3 pages worth of sign-up forms. Right? So you had to fill up information about all the data, information you have. And then interestingly enough, you filled all that stuff in. then you would download a certain application, and then when you wanted to add other people, you just talk to the other person. Hey, what's your user ID? And then I'm going to type their user ID, search for them in a directory, and add my friends. Right now, some designer, and every designer was doing the same thing until one day a designer basically came up and said, why do we need a login? We don't need a login. We don't need a password. And that was a fundamentally different thing. Like, what if people could log in without a password? And that's a mind-blowing thought process. Right? And then what this person said was, yeah, if I'm going to create a mobile-first experience, all I'm going to do is send an SMS to their WhatsApp, to their text, to their service provider, and the person is going to log in with that telephone number, and that's it. So that's what WhatsApp is, right? It basically got its first 150 million customers in a blink of an eye, literally, right? And it sold for multiples of billions of dollars. And all it did was it solved two problems, right? It said, what if people did not have to put in their password when they were logging in? And the second thing is, what if people did not have to search and add people into their contacts? The contacts were automatically there, right? Now, at that time when they did it, it was a revolutionary thought, because it's like, if you asked any designer, what if people could log in without a password? They say, how is that possible? You need a password. Or what if you didn't have to, all your contacts were automatically there. You didn't have to add new contacts. Like, how is that possible? Where will the contacts come from? But literally, that is exactly what WhatsApp did. So I think the question that is saying is, the human element that's in the game is thinking at the next level, right? It's about thinking about what is that one problem that I can solve that will take us to the next level, right? Whereas, if you have to create 10 screens, I want to create a login screen. Well, every application has done that. I mean, what is the best we were doing? Even even today, right? If you ask a lot of designers, they'll say, I just look at a lot of applications and see how they're doing login, and I'll just copy and paste, or I'll modify it like a little bit, but 90% of the work is done. So the argument is that the stuff that can be repeated should be outsourced, should be given to the AI. The stuff that cannot be repeated, which is that thought process of why do we need a login? Why do we need a password? Why do we need to invite people to be my contacts, right? Why can't it be done automatically? I think that is that thought process that we need to keep exercising. That's a mindset shift for a lot of us, right? Because for a lot of us, we define our jobs as saying, I'm creating screens. You are not in the job of creating screens anymore. You're on the job of solving problems. And I think that is the huge mindset shift that we need to look at as we start transitioning into the AI experiences. And again, the other thing also is, right, earlier people would say you had to fill 54 form fields, like, are you interested in arts? Are you interested in movies? Are you interested in traveling? Blah, 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 before the software could customize for you. What is interesting is Facebook had already proven it. It's been proved, like, even 3 or 4 years ago, it was pretty common knowledge. The idea is just based on how you interacted with 4 videos or 4 posts. They could predict what you liked, what you didn't like. They could predict what you would click at. And this is all AI that's actually figuring it out. So again, the other question is, what all can I automate? Because if you can get rid of 4 pages worth of questions and automate it with just 4 videos where you're looking at those videos and you don't even realize that the AI is learning about you, that's an interesting mindset to have. So again, it's the mindset shift that is the most critical as we move to start to work with AIs. Does that answer your question, Achyut?
Yeah, yes, sir. Definitely it does answer. Actually, it's also giving me a kind of a thought process that going ahead, like yesterday, my mentor said in Portfolio Builder series that, design drives technology, and also technology drives design. Like, I see that now this kind of a mindset, once it comes and, this AI is replacing redundant tasks, like mundane tasks, probably the push from designers for technological teams to go beyond their landscape would be much higher.
Yeah. And also the other role that the person is going to play in the game is you are an auditor now.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Earlier, you were a creator of content and somebody would critique it, right? But
Correct.
Now you are critiquing the work that the AI is doing. So technically, imagine like your first job role is having 2 people directly report to you, right? That is your first job. right after out of college. And those two people are the people that you have to talk to them, right? So you have to be able to convince them, you have to speak their language, and not just that, you have to verify the quality of work that they've done.
Right.
Which is a very different mindset from saying, okay, somebody's going to verify my work. Of course, somebody will verify your work. But at the end of the day, now your job is also to verify somebody else's work or the AI's work.
Great, sir.
Awesome.
That helps. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Achyut.
Let's move to the next question. Lakman. Lakman has actually 4 questions. How can we create a more personalized experience with AI? How can we use AI for repetitive tasks? And how can we improve accessibility? How it can be used to test and optimize designs based on user feedback and data?
Right. So I think I'll take the last question first because it's actually really fascinating. There's a story that runs within our tech circles. And the idea, one of the reasons why Google won the search engine wars was that, they would basically come in, they were so data centric, they would basically come in and say, okay, I want to change the screen. Okay. I want to increase the number of click-throughs. And this is exactly the AI mindset, right? In fact, search engines are probably one of the first products that worked on machine learning and AI, because the amount of thought that went in, they were there for almost 10 years or 15 years ago, And so the amount of thought process that went into building search engines, it's no surprise then that you see Google is at the forefront of AI, and there's a lot of these companies that are driving it, right? So there is a concept called A/B testing within design, okay, where you will take 2 designs and you would launch it and you would watch how people behave, and then based on that, you would make a decision whether to select a design A or design B. Now, what Google did was they took it to the next level, a whole different level of design, right? So instead of saying that, oh yeah, we are going to, create 2 designs, which is what most designers would do, is that create 2 designs and test it. The folks at Google said, forget that, right? We just want to test which color is best, right? And human beings are not the best people, because at the end, if you're testing 2 designs, you're only telling which of these 2 designs is better, right? So instead of that, Google said, let me find a range of colors, right? They said, I'm going to select like 100 colors or 256 colors or whatever. And they said, I'm going to select a range of 256 colors. And I'm going to tell my machine learning algorithm to say, test all 256 colors. And whichever one is the best, launch that. Right? So and they did it, right? They did it in a week. They were able to figure out which was that one color that worked best for them and launch that, right? Now, the traditional way of doing, I'm going to do 2 designs or whatever, just to do 2 designs took them a month. Whereas here, the AI actually optimized for a single color in a week's time. Right? So if you want to really understand what was different in both of these, right? In the first one, the idea was like if there are 2 designs, the designer had to sit down and think and ideate on those 2 designs, right? In the second Google example, what they did was they identified all the unique factors. It's like variabilizing, right? So they said, what is the one variable that is the color of the links? That is one variable. It is the size of text is another variable. The third variable is something else. So they were variabilizing. Once they identified the variables, they identified the range of those variables. And they basically told the AI system, you play within this range, within this box, test out every possible combination, tell me what works best, right? I am not going to judge which one works better or worse. Let the AI test it out and figure it out. So whereas in the first one, there's judgment involved. In the second one, it's objective data, right? In the first one, there were 2 specific designs that were well thought through. In the second one, it was the variables that were identified. right? So when you start thinking about that, if you want to be looking at testing and optimization, in fact, there are a lot of websites right now. For example, Optimizely is one of those, right? And there are a couple of them. We can probably just look. But there, if you all you have to do is just search for A/B testing tools, and you will realize there are lots of A/B testing tools that are out there that you can literally say, here is a set of 3 or 4 designs, automatically A/B test for me and tell me what the click-through, what the performance is. Right. And so that is what it is like, and I think that is also something designers need to be thinking about, which is again, thinking about design from a very logical perspective and thinking about it from a variabilization perspective. So that's what it is. And so again, for those of you that don't know variabilization, we've done a video on variabilization. We've done a class. So you can just search for variabilization on our channel and you'll be able to find it. So next, how do we create a more personalized experience? And I think this is a really valuable data point, which is how do I use AI in my products, right? So there's one question is, how do I use AI to improve my productivity? The second is, how do I use AI in my products? And I think the answer to that question is you are using AI by understanding, well, what are the opportunities for automation? What are the sources of data? So I think the basic exercise that we all need to do, and this is something that engineers do all the time, which is called the data flow diagrams, right? And I think as designers, we have to kind of understand that concept, which is understanding, well, what are all the different modules that can generate AI data, right? Or what are the different models that the company is running, right? So from here, what are the different kinds of inferences or decisions that can be made? So it is not a data flow, it is an inference, modeling the inferences that all your systems are capable of doing, right? And once you understand what are all the inferences, then you're looking at the journey map of the user and saying, okay, at what point can I speed up an experience? Can I reduce the number of errors using AI? Can I actually, so that is where you're thinking about potential opportunities for connecting both of those journeys. Okay, so that is what I would say is the pathway to creating a more personalized experiences is number one, understand the models, understand what inferences you can drive, understand the user needs, and figure out how you're going to connect all three together. Okay, that's the game that we need to play there. Then how can we use AI for repetitive tasks? And this is exactly what the whole workshop is going to be about, which is, completely hands-on. You guys are going to be like, creating your account. So that's one thing I would say is if you guys haven't already done it, okay. Number one, OpenAI. Okay, so set up an account with OpenAI. Okay. Number two, there are a couple of different tools. There's one is Midjourney. I'm just going to type it into the text chat box. Midjourney is one. Then the other one is Blue Willow. Okay. Then there's a third one, and I think Krati will have more lists, but these are the two accounts. Sorry?
Lexica is the third one.
Lexica, thank you. Right. So these are the three tools. Make sure you're signed in. If you have a Discord account, you have to connect it to your Discord account, authenticate your email, and then you should have this ready. Okay, do not start using it because they have limited number of credits. And so if you finish your credits up, then you don't, you don't get to use them again. So, I mean, you don't get to practice with the tool while we are in the workshop. So I would say create your accounts, set this up, and be ready for the class. So that's what it is. But again, the workshop is purely about how you're going to use AI for repetitive tasks. And then how can we improve accessibility? And I think there are a lot of tools. There's also like a color panel or something like that. I can just very quickly look it up. I think it's called color. I forget what it's called, but anyways, I think it's called colormind.io. So I'm just going to type it in for you guys so you can get access to it. Okay, so this is another tool that I would just say, like, go ahead and check it out. But this is a really interesting tool that can, and again, accessibility has multiple layers to it, including that are non-visual. But I'm just talking about the visual components, which is colormind.io, which is a really cool tool. And I kind of really enjoy the way they have approached the process of picking up colors. So again, you have a lot of these tools that are available. But again, I suspect that at this point, I have not seen an AI that is really good at dealing with accessibility issues, but it's a relatively low-hanging fruit. And I suspect it's going to happen pretty fast. Does that answer your questions, Lukman?
Yes, Prasad. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Awesome. So for those of you that do not have accounts in these systems, please get these accounts, sign up for Discord. And then if somebody could share our Discord channel as well, you know, if you're not on our Discord channel, just sign up for get into Discord and then add these guys into your Discord, desktop tool or whatever, so you can start playing around with it. Cool. Let's go on to the next question.
Moving on to the next one. It's from Yasmin. Will AI make me lazy as a creative thinker? How do I know when to stop asking AI and think as a human? I don't want to weaken my creative muscles and lose its capability. And
so can you tell me what's going on in your mind when you ask this question, Yasmin?
Yes, so I don't know how to stop asking AI questions because I can see that it's going to take over many things, and in the beginning it's going to be quite magical to me that it's answering so many questions and it's doing so many things that I was spending hours to it. And now that it's doing so many things, I would be so lazy and so happy that, oh, it's doing everything for me. So then, so yeah, that's the question, that when do I stop asking questions to AI and, what needs a human intervention?
Right. So this is really fascinating because I kind of think about it like very similar to the work from home paradigm, right? Because earlier you were in an office and, you know, everybody would see you and you would be working and you'd be coming in at a certain time, leaving at a certain time. But when suddenly the work from home thing happened, some people, it worked out really beautifully for some people. And for some people, it reduced their productivity significantly. The reason is nobody's seeing you, right? So you're just doing what you're doing and, you know, you could continue doing what you're doing and people would still appreciate you. So why do you need to work 8 hours when you can work 6 hours, when you can work 5.5 hours? So, and a lot of us also, you know, moved back and relaxed a little bit when the work from home happened. But I think there were also a lot of people that shone because they just took that discipline to the next level. How do I organize? How do I set up? How do I do this, right? And interestingly enough, when somebody is at a junior level, they're not required to have that discipline, okay, at least when you're in the office. But then when you get to the senior level, you are required to have that discipline. The same way I would say is like what design is, right? When you're at a junior level, you're not required to be the auditor. You're not required to be the critic, right? You're not required to kind of think critically because somebody else is always telling you what to do, right? But now, all of a sudden, if you are basically, you know, expected to do that, that's a whole new skill that you need to learn. Now, it is very easy for people who are starting off their career to say, okay, yeah, I'm going to take whatever the AI is giving me and put it out there. But the point is, you're going to get caught because the AI will make mistakes for sure. And your work is going to be below par. And somebody will always basically catch you and give you that feedback. Hopefully, if you're in a good company, people will give you the feedback and say, you messed up here. Right. But as you're a senior person, anyways, you would be giving feedback, anyways, you'd be giving critiques, right? So that kind of ability stays with you. Right? So I think the first thing that's going to happen, which what you call laziness, right, is actually the trust. It is reliance, right? And there's studies, research studies that talk about, like, you know, how Netflix and all these streaming movies, video channels work. So earlier when they came in, we would all search for what movies we wanted, right? Right now, how many times do we even use the search feature? We just look at what's out there, we browse and we select, right? So what has happened is we are now becoming consumers, what do you call, passive consumers of the recommendations that are being given to us. We are not actually choosing a choice beyond what is given to us, right? Whereas in the beginning days, we would always ask for it because we knew that the system was small. So I think that, in a Netflix kind of a thing, it would work because even if you're passive, it doesn't change the world. However, when you are building your career, I think you can never be a passive consumer of recommendations, right? And I think it's a mental discipline fact. It's like we have to be mentally disciplined to check and verify everything, right? We have to kind of think like, okay, what are my assumptions? So we have to get really good at saying, well, if I'm giving this kind of requirement to the AI, what are my assumptions that are causing me to give that requirement to the AI? Are my assumptions correct? Are there other sets of assumptions where that would be true? Right? And I think having that metacognition and asking questions about, what are my assumptions? Are my assumptions correct or not? Are there other possibilities? Is what is going to keep you creative. Right. Now, the argument of like, and this is something that I've always kind of thought about, which is, there'd be people who'd be visual designers on my team and they would say, jo dikhta hai, wo bikta hai, right? So if I design really well, that's what is going to sell. And so the visual designer is always king. My argument is that's true, but the AI can probably do that job, right? It's not about jo dikhta hai. It is, now the focus is on really like, what problems are you solving? What are the assumptions that are leading into that problem and how else can you solve it? And that is the key to retaining your control and your creativity in the game. Does that answer your question, Yasmin?
Yes, almost. The rest of what is still keeping me intrigued is when I start using it.
Huh.
When I have that experience, probably I'll come to know that, yes, it still needs my logic and my human way of thinking during designing. Actually, I'm also an abstract artist. So what happens is I have seen Mid-Journey creating images, paintings, and all this stuff, and taking over the artist, and in many ways. But
Right.
definitely, it can't think intuitively or be original. It's only capturing what is already there in its data. So yes, that
Not
is said.
necessarily, not necessarily, right? Depending on how the AI is trained, it can actually go beyond what is in its data. So there is a whole very intriguing model called adversarial, I forget what it's called, but what they do is like, it's like playing chess, okay? So you would have two AIs playing chess with each other. Right? And the rules are the same. So whether you win or lose is a very objective decision, right? And so they are not reading any books. They are not playing, they are not like researching on existing chess games and all that. It's complete brand new. They are still learning like, okay, yeah, I have, the rules are I can move this by this much. I can move that by that much. That's all I know. And then I know when I lose or win. And you have two AIs that are competing with each other, right? Which is creating completely brand new ways of playing the game. Right? Imagine you leave two AIs to play with each other over like, over like a month, right? I'm sure they would have played games that nobody's even imagined. Right? So my argument is, yeah, right now, you're talking about, yes, there is a body of knowledge that you're building off on. But again, depending on the way the AI is, the model is being created, you could be creating something completely new. And I would say, it's, do not assume that, the AI cannot surpass you, right? It will, and at the rate at which it's going, like literally, I would argue that the next 5 years are the time of AI, right? It's AI in everything around you, right? AI in warfare, because now you're talking about, for the first time, you're seeing weapons being fitted into platforms that are run by AIs, right? You're talking about a pilot, a fight. Earlier, you would have a squadron of planes where you'd have like, 36 planes or whatever, depending on whichever country, but 36 pilots that are flying the plane at the same time. Today, that's not the game, right? So where you have one pilot, but 6 other planes that are controlled by AI that is slave to the one pilot. So the pilot is technically flying 7 planes, right? Or even when you look at like image recognition, tickets, whether you get speeding tickets, that's all automated, right? There's so many things that are kind of getting automated that the evolution of this discipline is going to be like, literally, it's going to take off like a rocket. It's already taking off like a rocket. It's just the time is just, it's going to move so much faster because we've hit the tipping point. So, yeah, so I think the second question you're asking is like, you want to play with it. And I think that's exactly what we're going to do this weekend. We will play with a lot of these tools. We will kind of do this. And the other thing that we've done is we've analyzed, right? So what are all the tasks that designers do? And I think they're like the 48 tasks or something like that designers do. And out of those 48 tasks, there's a certain number of tasks that are all repetitive, right? Those are the tasks that we believe are the first rung that we need to learn how to automate those, how to use the AIs to do that, and then get that out of our way. Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Yasmin.
Thank you.
Before moving to the next question, we have a very interesting question in our YouTube live session. And
Okay.
One of our viewer is asking, how do we, how AI can solve in UX research? For example, user interview, contextual inquiries, understanding user mindset, etc.
Mm-hmm. So I think there are a couple of different data points that are kind of coming in, right? Which is, when we talk about research, it's like, what do people think, feel, say, and do? Right? That's a common framework that we are all familiar with. Now, there is also a system called the FACS, FACS. It's called the Facial Action Coding System. I believe that's what it is, right? And what it does is it's able to, they did this phenomenal research, it's been there for a while, where they said, the emotions that people show on their faces is constant, independent of culture. So you could be somewhere in China, you could be somewhere in India, US, or you could be even in an island that has never seen any other human beings. Okay. But the emotional reactions that show up on your face are consistent in all of these cases, right? So there are modules that are currently available, which are like video camera based modules that are actually coding what you're feeling, what emotion you're feeling at any point in time, right? There are coding tools that are available that are basically determining what action you're doing, right? What activity you're doing. There are tools that are available that are able to interpret what you're trying to say. It's just summarizers. So for example, one of the things like, is just record a talk, get the transcript, feed it to ChatGPT and ask it to summarize, right? Or identify the top insights out of that talk or the top action items, right? You will start realizing there's summarizers that are available. So I think as part of the research game, and also I don't see, it's not too far away where, AI can also create your research protocols, because research protocols, you're saying, hey, here's the screen. These are the 5 different elements I need to test, but creating the research protocol is fairly repetitive, right? What kind of question should you ask? There's a science behind that. How do you avoid biases? All of that is fairly repetitive. So the AI can create it for you. So I think the larger game is a lot of these, protocol creation, a lot of the, you have to identify the research question, but once the research question is identified, I would suspect that you can, we are fairly close to creating research protocols. We are fairly, we are already there in terms of interpreting the visual data that we are getting, right? We are also fairly close to, interpreting mouse movements, because there's a lot of behavioral data that can be interpreted. Earlier, it was practically impossible to interpret behavioral data just because of sheer volume of data, right? But today you can interpret that behavioral data. The other thing also is, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with this, but there's something called remote testing, remote usability testing, where you're doing unmoderated testing or moderated testing. And so you can have AI systems do a lot more of those unmoderated testing, right? Where you are, you have that protocol and you're basically telling the AI like, hey, I'd like to test all of this. And the AI is basically reacting to the individual in more real time. But again, these are some really interesting opportunities. But what I say is like, pretty much every discipline in design, which is interaction, visual, research, copywriting, right, or prototyping, all of these guys are ripe for automation to a certain extent.
In the interest of time, moving to the next question, we have about a few minutes left. Astha asked, how can designers ensure that their use of AI does not replace human intuition and creativity in the design process? And how can they balance the benefit of automation with the need of creative expression and empathy in design?
I think this is very closely related to some of the previous questions. And I think the answer to that is it's our discipline, right? We have to be disciplined. We can't give control away. If you give control away to a tool, then your life is being run by that tool, right? And so the idea is you have to realize that you are the person that's going to be in control. You have to understand the discipline a lot better, because again, if you are controlling a tool with so much power, the level of understanding of the discipline that you have should also be significantly more, right? You should be able to very quickly determine whether the tool did the correct decision or the bad decision or whatever. So I think your knowledge and your understanding of that subject matters also needs to be very, very significant, right? That coupled with discipline is going to make sure that you're always in control of the design process. Does that answer your question, Astha?
Yeah. Like it is similar to previous questions, and yes, discipline does make a huge impact.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Astha.
Thank you.
The next one is from Ajay, and it's, to what extent can AI assist in the technical and design thinking process of UX design, and how can it contribute to improving the overall quality of user experience?
So this is a very interesting component. So if you look at the tools that are available right now, which is, the predominant tools that we're all familiar with, which is ChatGPT, they are not tied into live data. Okay. So what is interesting is this is previous data that you are able to do this, right? But however, there are demos that are available online where you can say like, you've used ChatGPT to, populate cells, right? So here there's a very interesting example of get me the top 50 companies and their key contact people and then their telephone numbers. Okay. This was a task. And so basically somebody created a GPT plugin for Excel, where GPT would actually read your understanding. You just type it as a formula. GPT would understand what you're asking for, create a query, which would then be plugged into some search engine that is generating the data, and GPT is kind of then interpreting it, summarizing it, and giving you the information that you need, right? So I think right now, the way I look at it is the minimum table stakes are automating the repetitive tasks, right? But at a higher level, it's like, can you create a design system? Can you actually automate the code? Because the coding can be done automatically. And in fact, I would encourage you to say, type in GPT-3 and I think it's a Figma plugin. That's the keyword. So GPT-3 Figma, GPT-3, right? So this is, just type in this query on YouTube and you will see like somebody just created the whole of, I believe it was Instagram in under 30 seconds, the whole screen. Okay. And then, it's very easy again to take that and code it, generate a code around it. So again, I think the idea that, you can, once you conceptualize something, you can actually use AI to generate screens for it, and again, accept or reject it and play around with it, that is going to take a lot of, it's going to pick up a lot of steam, right? And it's going to accelerate much faster from the design perspective. So I think when you're thinking about technical and design thinking process, I would say, ChatGPT or AI at best right now is a good assistant for you. So you can have it do the initial thinking. So what I say is it's easier to edit an existing email as opposed to write a brand new email from the ground up. And that's the same thing with what AI can do, is it can create the first draft of content for you. And then once you have that first draft of content, then you're very quickly modifying it and you're moving forward. Right. And so the way I look at it right now is think about your AI assist as an assistant that will generate the first drafts that you can react to and engage with and build up from there. And I think that is what is probably the next challenge apart from the automation, or the next opportunity apart from the automation.
The next one is from Lavanya. How can we understand and analyze the problems by using AI? How to manage our creative thinking using AI? I think this is something we have been already talking about.
Right. And this is something that we are also experimenting with, Lavanya. So I don't think I have the perfect answer, but we've been experimenting with certain kinds of tasks. So what we did was we said, can AI create personas for us? Right. And we ran an experiment where we said, okay, let's collect some data and how do we ask the question? So that was one. And right now it was hit and miss. It didn't really do a really good job. But then if you ask the right sequence of questions, it gave a really amazing artifact. That was a good starting point. It's still not, something that I'd publish and share with everybody, but it's something that, is a good starting point for me to think and kind of build from there. So I would say creative thinking, right? I think designers are at their creative best when you get to try more ideas, experiment with it and reject those ideas and experiment with new ideas, right? And that is the power of what AI can give you, is like you can literally, in the time frame it would take for you to develop, maybe like to just think about the questions, AI can generate whole screens for you. Right? It can generate whole applications. It can think about like, hey, what are the what ifs? What are the design problems? What are the design opportunities? It can do all of that for you. And so I would say, think of AI as your buddy who's throwing ideas at you and you are reacting to them, right? So that's a really good way, like, at least the way I see it is, it's a great way to ideate with an AI or with a direct report, where it's throwing out some ideas and you're reacting to it like, okay, I think that is good, this is bad, but why is it bad? Why is that good, right? So it's helping you think and crystallize your thought process. And I think that is a really good way, at least in terms of the process, the design process and the design thinking approach, that can be really helpful for you.
Next, we have Fatima. As AI has been identifying the user's needs and behaviors, which directs to change of product design to attract the customers. So so does AI touch the technical complexity and the security of the product?
Right. See, I think, when you talk about complexity and the security, so in fact, there's been a lot of experiments with ChatGPT or generative AI, so to say, where people are saying, hey, can you generate code for me for this algorithm? Or can you show me code snippets that will do this? And, AI has actually generated complete code for WordPress plugins. It's created WordPress plugins, which is like amazing, because even I don't know how to, like, I can't even imagine where to start, how to create a WordPress plugin, but somebody just basically sat there and said, create a WordPress plugin that does this, this, and this, and then the AI created a WordPress plugin. So you can have AI creating code. So now, if you think about the traditional problem that we have as a designer, right? you might notice a problem, but then the challenge that I give to everybody or all my students is this. I say, listen, you've identified 100 problems, and I know you spent 80 hours finding all these problems, but the question is, which of these 2 or 3 problems are most important? Because you don't have infinite engineering resources, right? So you have to identify the top 2 or 3 problems so that the engineers can go solve that problem, right? Because you're not going to have the resources. But now imagine if instead of engineering, even if 30% of engineering was supported by AI, right? That just basically means your organization has grown by 30%. Isn't it? It's engineering headcount. So you don't have to be as worried about engineering limitations. So instead of having to worry about fixing 3 problems, you can maybe fix 7 problems now, right? And so as you start thinking about it, as the complexity changes, it is not going to be very, and I see this maybe a year, 2 down the line. I don't see this as being very difficult where you say, okay, modify this and the AI completely rewrites the code and gives it back to you, right? Earlier, we used to have this term which was called the engineering debt, right? Which is if you don't write good code and stuff like that, over time, your code will become so confusing and so bad that you can't use it. But today, if AI is going to rewrite the code multiple times a day, then you don't really have to worry about your engineering debt, right? So that means the amount of speed that you're going to have to evolve your product is going to be so much faster, right? So I would say it's an opportunity, right? So it's an opportunity to kind of think through like how you can evolve faster, how you can develop your products faster, and I think that's the name of the game.
Okay, Prasad. Thank you.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Fatima. So I think, are we out of time or how much time do we have?
We are a little, yes, out of time, but I would like to draw your attention to this question. Neha Bhore, she's not our community member yet, but she asked this question on LinkedIn. So she had actually 2 questions: how to implement AI in our case studies and where to use it. What change will AI bring to our jobs as UX UI designers? And I think Neha is attending this meeting.
Awesome. Cool. So my thought is, how do you implement AI in your case studies? And again, it's a very, I would say the process or the framework that you need to basically be applying is think of the journey map, right? Think of the models that you have available and think of how you are able to connect those, right? So what are the intents that you are able to generate? So when I say intents, right? So it's a very interesting thing. So for example, if somebody was searching for dogs, right? Technically, the AI could come back with an intent score, right? So the AI would say, there's a 70% chance that this person is looking to buy a puppy, right? There's a 5% chance that this person is researching a specific dog breed. There's a 2% chance that this person. So what is happening is the AI is classifying your intents, right? That's what is the classification thing. So when you look at an AI, it is never 100% certainty, right? It's a probabilistic model. And what that means is, okay, probabilistically 90%, I think this is the probability, 10% this is the probability, 5% this is the probability, right? And I think, earlier we used to do the same probabilistic design when we design it for our users, because if you're creating a B2C product, you're thinking probabilistically what percentage of people will have need A versus need B versus need C, and then how do I create my screen around that, right? If 70% of people want to do A, then I want to make sure that 70% can notice feature A, right? If 10% are going to need something, I'm going to make sure that 10% are going to be able to notice it. So the idea is, earlier we were doing probabilistic design from the perspective of user intentions, right? But now you are actually in a much more interesting position where, you don't have to modify your screen, right? So the AI can tell you like, okay, hey, probabilistic. Now imagine earlier you were saying 70% of the time people might be wanting to log in, right? But when the user comes in, the AI might actually say, I know this person is logged out. I think it's a 90% probability that this person wants to log in. Okay. So you can, in theory, completely and dramatically change the page just to allow the person to log in. Right? earlier you were talking about static or relatively static pages that were meeting multiple intents, but here you're now in real time able to predict what that intention is and then kind of change your website or change that screen to achieve that intent, right? So that is what I mean by intent, okay, is understanding the intention and understanding the AI's evaluation of those intentions. And so the way I would actually say is understanding the intent, understanding the what models you have available, and understanding what the user needs are. And if you connect that, I think that is where the amazing opportunity comes for us. Right? And it's all about thinking about probabilities. That's the way we have to change the way we think about design.
Thank you, sir. Just
Does that answer your question?
yes, sir. Yes.
Awesome. Cool.
So we have more questions coming in the YouTube channel. We have more questions on LinkedIn, but I guess we are a little short of time. But I'm sure that all of you have registered already for the workshop. And if you haven't yet, please do. And I'm sure all your questions will be answered during the workshop. Prasad, do you want to say something about it?
Yeah, and the other thing I would say is make sure you have accounts with Midjourney, Blue Willow, ColorMind, Lexica, because in the workshop, we will be working very, very hands-on, right? And you will be kind of getting your hands dirty. And by the time the workshop is done, I would expect that you should be fairly comfortable with saying, yep, I can automate maybe 10 or 20% of my work, right? And obviously, as time goes, you will be able to automate more and more, but I want you to get comfortable with those AIs. Cool. And then we'll see all of you guys on the weekend, on the 18th. Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Reminding again,
Bye.
18th to 20th is the workshop dates. Thank you so much, Prasad.
Okay, thank you, guys. Bye.
Thank you so
Thanks
much,
for
sir.
joining
Thank you.
today.
Thank you.